Today we are taking a look at Walmart and we're doing grilled cheese this time around. So on the left you're going to have the bottom shelf ingredients, on the right you'll have the top shelf. For the most part it's going to be great value versus the name brand that we could find. So here's all the pricing on the left and the right, and we're starting off with the white sandwich bread. So this was 99 cents from Walmart. It's as cheap as it looks. It's a huge loaf, 99% air. Super lightweight, super airy, and it really just didn't feel like there was much to it. You'll notice here when I squeeze down on it, nothing bounces back. There just really wasn't much to the bread. It compacted a ton when I squeeze it down, really small, and just feels like overall cheap bread. To call the taste of this bread mediocre is a bit generous. I definitely wouldn't catch myself using this bread for anything else except for one thing, and I'll talk about that later in this video. Comparing that to the Pepperidge Farm, you can see here that first off it's got this really fancy wrapping around it too that prevents it from going stale. Opening it up, it looks like it has a much firmer texture to it as well, and it bounces back a little when I squeeze it. Really just an overall better piece of bread. Definitely feels like the pricing on it is worth it. It also didn't compact as much as the cheaper brand did. Using my arbitrary ball up the bread test, you can barely see that there's any difference. Actually, in my hand it felt like it compacted better, but you can't tell a visual difference at all. Kind of looking side by side, you can see that the Great Value is noticeably larger than the Pepperidge Farm, and you kind of see the major differences in the look and texture of them. My test of how easily the bread tears with one hand shows that the Great Value shreds a little bit more than the Pepperidge Farm, and that this test is super relevant to bread. The next is the cheese. So we're starting off with the American cheese singles from Great Value, and these were basically the same as the plastic they were wrapped in. Super cheap feeling, really just that gross over-processed feel that you dread. Super floppy. You can tell that there's really just not much to them in the cheese world. They can't even call them cheese, it's a cheese product. And then contrasting that to the Deluxe Deli American cheese from Kraft. This is also classified as a cheese product, but you can see here they're not individually wrapped in plastic. They are all stacked together, and it feels a lot more like what you'd expect to be American cheese. Definitely has a more than tangential relation to cheese. A lot more substantial, less floppy, and then the taste was a lot better as well. Really had a better cheddar flavor to it, and overall really liked it. You can see here comparing the two, it just flops around. The Kraft Deluxe singles really did taste quite a bit better. I would recommend them in most cases for just about anything, though they don't melt as fast. The Great Value ones just kind of taste plasticky. Ignore the dog in the background as I'm doing my cheese slap tests. These were a very scientific test that shows how much nasty stuff picks up off of our counter. So next is the butter. We've got that Great Value butter here. It's the same as we used before, so if you've watched any of our other videos, you'll know that this is a really light colored butter and not a lot of flavor to it. When you compare it to the top shelf one, the Kerrygold, it really pales in comparison. The Kerrygold tastes a lot better, but it definitely is double the price. Kerrygold is $3.99 for 2 sticks, and the Great Value is about $2.99 typically for 4 sticks. So it's double the price to get the Kerrygold, and it's in most cases it's worth it. It really is a much better piece of butter. We've probably worn out our welcome a bit with Kerrygold. It's always the most expensive one at the local supermarkets we go to. If we ever end up finding one that's more expensive, we'll definitely go with that, but for now Kerrygold is our reigning champ and will be for the next while. Moving on to the grilled cheese macon. You can kind of see here with the Great Value bread and butter, even though the butter is room temperature, I have a hard time spreading it on the bread and it just kind of starts disintegrating and shredding. Really reminds me of Wonder Bread with that fact, and it just isn't great. It's basically a one-purpose bread, and that's a little bit of a hint of how I think it turned out. Then zooming in on it, you've got that nice, beautiful butter sizzle. Overall, the Great Value ingredients really didn't taste great individually. None of them had any good flavor to them, so didn't have high hopes for this grilled cheese. We ended up adding 2 pieces of cheese to it to give it the best opportunity it had to be a good grilled cheese sandwich. And then I topped it off with the next one. This one is already buttered off screen. And then I took a quick peek here. It was still pretty pale faced, so we dropped it back down to let it cook a bit more. And it ended up toasting really nicely. I was kind of surprised by this because the butter just isn't great. Didn't expect it to taste good, honestly, for how poor everything tasted alone. But everything toasted nicely, looked great. Ended up moving to the cutting board, cut it in half here. And this is a really bad cross section. The knife I had was a little dull, ended up just smushing the bread, so ignore that and don't judge it just yet. You can see there's a pretty good cheese pullback there. And then when we were taste testing it, I was shocked with how good this was. This tasted like like a classic grilled cheese. The only thing missing here is the tomato soup. It was phenomenal. I can't tell you how surprised I was to find out that these ingredients made one of the best grilled cheeses I've ever had. It really just hit all the points you want: gooey, hot, crunchy, buttery. Hit them all and hit them well. Moving on to the top shelf ingredients. You can see here that the bread did not smush as much as the Great Value counterpart did. The butter has a lot more sizzle to it, and the cheese is basically the same size as the bread. We did 2 as well on this one to give it the best chance possible and to make our comparison fair. Even though this was a little too much cheese, I would definitely recommend just doing 1 slice. And with a little bit of struggle to flip, it has a nice toasty exterior. Looks great. Both of the sandwiches actually had a really good, nice exterior on them. They definitely tasted great because of that. One of the only differences between the two during the cooking process was the crust on it. I think it was due to the butter, and you could definitely smell the brown butter flavor more on the Kerrygold than you could on the Great Value butter. I think it made it just a little bit better on the top shelf ingredients. And then cutting that in half, you can see this amazing cross section here. Just looks like a nice, classic, delicious grilled cheese sandwich. Just steaming from it being nice and hot, and just the cheese is just oozing out of it. Really, really phenomenal. Great ingredients. Made a really good looking grilled cheese. Nice, delicious looking cheese pull there and everything. And when it came down to the taste of this one, I'm gonna be shocked to say, I don't really think it was much better. For the price, I think I would go with the cheaper ingredients here if I was making grilled cheese. I'm shocked to admit this because usually the better ingredients do a way better job. And even with the bread here falling over, it was still a better sandwich on the cheap side of things rather than spending the extra money. So my recommendation, go cheap. If you like what we're doing, go ahead and drop a like here and then subscribe to our channel. We're trying to do a video every single week, so tune back in next week. Thanks for watching.